Live from the Xfinity Studios at WVON. We're your original social media. Hashtag the Sports Cypher on 1690, the talk of Chicago.
Once again, it's on
1690 WVON.
Good evening. Welcome to the best part of your Sunday night. I'm Maya Akai, and you are tuned into the Sports Cypher, where you get the most relevant and real sports talk you're going to get anywhere on the AM or FM dial. This show is going to be a little different because we're having some technical difficulties to kick the show off, so here's some fair warning. There's no callers. But don't worry, I'm not going to make you listen to me all night long. I promise you. Because back in studio with me, if you listened last week, I have Gabe Salgado, who will be co-hosting, running the ship with me. Welcome back.
I'm back.
He is back.
And I'm also on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. That'll also link you to my Facebook page. You can also find me on YouTube. Type Gabe Salgado in the search engine. That's GabeSalgado. How are you, Maya?
I'm good. So social media is how you will be interacting with the show tonight. So you got Gabe's info. You can always tweet or Facebook me at the Sports Chica, or you can always go to at the Sports Cypher, and that's Cypher with a Y for Facebook and Twitter. So that's how we're going to have to communicate and pull your thoughts and your comments into the show, which are always good. We're going to kick off the show with some, obviously, NBA talk, Bulls, some big moves. You might not have been highly impressed initially what you thought happened in free agency, but they made some acquisitions, obviously, and Paul Gasol has been finalized, Mirotic, and some other things. So we're going to take that first hour and talk some NBA and Bulls talk. We're going to try to squeeze in maybe some Major League Baseball talk, some Cubs, some Sox, since the All-Star game is over with, kind of get feedback. It seemed like the All-Star game this year got some good traction, like people were really interested, and that's something that hasn't happened in the last couple years. So maybe towards the end of the hour, we'll try to talk some baseball. That second hour, we're going to jump in and talk Bears. Yeah. We're going to go NFL. This was supposed to be the week we were going to kick off around the league. You know, that's the segment where we go around the NFL and look at every division and talk about the teams, what they've done in the offseason when they match up with the Bears, but we'll have to push that to next week. We'll start doing the AF and NFC South next week, so make sure you tune in for that, because that will be the right before we kind of start the whole preseason, we get a full look at the NFL. So we'll talk Bears in that second hour, as well as we'll do some headlines and hot topics in that 10 o'clock hour as well. So that's how the show is going to flesh out. Like I said, you can't call in, so social media is your way to interact with the show. It's at the Sports Chica or at the Sports Cypher, and that's Cypher with a Y. So
you know why this is going to be a great show?
Because I said so.
Because you are the Sports Chica, baby.
So let's start. Okay, Gabe, let's go ahead and start right and jump into talking Bulls, because there was what I felt this very low applause when the news came out that the Bulls amnestied Carlos Boozer. For a couple years, for whatever reason, many people felt that he was the root of all evil and he was the demise of the team. Like, their success hinged on what he lacked to do on defense, which I always thought was interesting, because I'm always going to harp on this and say he's the same defensive guy you got from the Utah Jazz.
Exactly.
So what you see is what you get, and he didn't do anything different. So for a while, obviously with the absence of Derrick Rose, I suppose that people deferred to Boozer being, I guess, the player that was supposed to step up and be the end-all to be-all.
I think that Rose's absence probably highlighted Boozer's flaws. Excuse me, I'm stuttering tonight. And especially with the way that Joakim Noah stepped up on both sides of the ball, it kind of made everybody think, hey, why can't Boozer do that? So I think that what ended up happening is, in a sense, I guess you could say Boozer was kind of a fall guy for everything that went wrong. But at the same time, you know, Tom Thibodeau preaches defense, and, you know, Boozer could grab a few rebounds here and there, but not much else beyond that. But just like you said, that's the same player he's been since he started in the league. That was the same player he was at Duke. And, you know, he
was drafted by the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
Same guy.
And he played under Mike Krzyzewski in college. So really, it's just like you knew what you were getting when you signed him. And when you signed him, it was because you weren't able to get LeBron James, and you touted him as like, oh, well, he was the guy we wanted all along anyway.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a double-edged sword in that situation. And you talk about, like, you know, low applause. It was kind of felt like the same way when they announced that they were getting Paul Gasol, because everybody wanted Carmelo Anthony.
Low applause.
And
look, it's the best they could do, given that Carmelo stayed in New York. LeBron was either staying in Miami or obviously he was going to Cleveland.
Right.
So to be honest, Paul Gasol, based on what was needed for the team outside of Kevin Love, was probably the next big fit out there for them.
And the thing about Kevin Love, because I know a lot of people wanted to see Kevin Love in a Bulls uniform, the Bulls would have had to give up, in my opinion, too much to get him. Anybody that tries to get Kevin Love was going to have to give up, too much to get him because, obviously, you're not only are you talking his talent, but also the type of money that he's making, that type of contract. So really, the Timberwolves are going to want quite a bit in return for him.
They are.
And, as far as the Bulls, on paper right now, it looks like they're putting a decent team together, but really, I think that Bulls fans won't get over the whole Carmelo thing until October, to be honest with you.
But here's the thing. You can't cry over spilt milk that really isn't spilt milk because here's the thing. Nobody else in the NBA got their hands on Carmelo Anthony. I think we talked about this a little bit last week that with Phil Jackson moving into a very key management position with the Knicks, that if he was to lose Carmelo Anthony in his first season with that organization, that would be a huge stain on him building his rapport with the Knicks organization as well as the Knicks fans. So he chose to stay in New York, which doesn't surprise me because I was like, is Phil going to really let it go so easily? But, Phil and his zen, he kept it cool. So the Bulls didn't lose out to something because he went back to where he came from. I think people often get free agency a little twisted. Just because a player chooses to exercise their free agency option doesn't mean they're always leaving the team.
Correct.
Sometimes it means it gives them more of a negotiation tool to use. Sometimes they're doing it because it allows a contract to be restructured and for them, the team, to be able to go out and get additional talent. Or sometimes they really are shopping themselves to see what's out there.
Like was the case with the Miami Heat.
Yes.
And, the thing about Phil Jackson is not only, okay, he has Carmelo, he has the building block in pace, but now he's going to be under pressure to turn this team into a winner. And that's probably not going to happen this coming season. It's probably going to take a year or two before the Knicks get back to the postseason. And when, like we were talking about last week, being in charge of the Knicks basketball operations doesn't come with a whole lot of autonomy.
No.
And really, it's been a revolving door position over the last decade. So really, I hope that, Phil Jackson understands what he's gotten himself into.
But
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think Carmelo is going to have regrets because he kissed a championship away, by not going with the Bulls? I mean, can we guarantee that he's going to win anything in New York?
He may not right away, but if the Knicks continue down this path of losing and putting overpaid and underrated talent, or overpaid and overrated talent up behind him, then maybe he'll start to regret it, but he won't regret it right away. Right? I honestly think that part of this was because his wife didn't want to leave New York.
Everybody always puts this all on Lala, and Lala is my girl, don't get me wrong. But, seriously, you fellas make Carmelo seem so henpecked. I have never seen anything like this. Like, Lala rules that household, apparently.
Well, no, she's a real nice girl. She's a real nice girl.
I like Lala.
I saw her on Arsenio Hall last week, and she was 200% behind her man.
No, to me, they are a very balanced couple. I really do like them. I do. So I don't have an issue. But it's funny that he is so henpecked. You fellas, Lala. It's Lala's world. But, but you do make a good point about will he win a championship. It's a toughie because I think, Gabe, you made a good point in saying it's really about if they have a couple losing seasons, what you can get in the draft, even though we might have seen one of the best draft class we're going to maybe see in the next couple years. And that's what makes LeBron's transition back to Cleveland so unique is he's not stepping into that Cavaliers team like he lost. He really has a lot of talent with having, Andrew Wiggins, Deion Waiters, Kyrie Irving.
But check this out.
That's different.
But check this out. Carmelo is doing what LeBron should have did. He stayed with the hometown team, New York.
Yeah, you're right. He is from New York. He played at Syracuse, so there is clearly. I don't know honestly if the love affair is the same in New York with Carmelo Anthony as it was with LeBron in Cleveland. Ohio just had a special affection for LeBron, watching him in high school. So it's a little bit different than Carmelo. And
the thing you got to ask yourself too, if LeBron never went to Miami, would the Cleveland Cavaliers honestly won a title in those last 4 years? If LeBron would have stayed taking all the money that Cleveland would have been able to give him under the salary cap, would they still be able to put a winner around them? That's going to be the ultimate million-dollar question, is whether or not that would have been possible.
Well, I'll tell you what. The Cavaliers are going to be interesting to watch solely because of the level of young talent that they have. I'm curious really how LeBron is going to kind of mesh with this young, good, talented team. So if nothing else, they're going to be good to watch. I'm not saying I see them rushing into, the playoffs, but I don't think they'll be that far off. What'll be interesting is what pieces they bring in from free agency with some veteran players to kind of round out that roster to give a bit more balance and experience. I
know there's a lot of talk about Cleveland considering parting ways with Andrew Wiggins to get Kevin Love. I think that would be a big mistake because they have so much. They have so much potential with him. And okay, yes, Love is a good player, but he's already got a few years under his belt. He doesn't have the type of athleticism and the type of potential that Wiggins does. Plus, Wiggins is a lot younger. He's just 19, 20 years old.
I saw the clips of Wiggins and Jabari Parker from last Friday's Summer League game. I believe Jabari had 18 points and Wiggins had 17. They were pretty close because they were on grand display, them being the top draft picks.
This would be my question to all my NBA fanatics. Here's a moment for you to play GM. If you've got LeBron back in Cleveland, you've got talent like Kyrie Irving, you've got Deion Waiters, you've got some good stuff going on. So obviously Andrew Wiggins, who obviously college career was very short, and I wouldn't say mediocre, but probably a tad bit disappointing. But right now he's lighting it up in Summer League, and he's playing the key talent in that class, that rookie class that's with him. So if you are the GM in Cleveland, are you willing to trade away the potential good talent, the explosiveness you're going to get, as well as the scoring ability? He's pretty balanced on defense as well, so you're getting balance offensive and defensively for him. Are you willing to trade him away to get the likes of Kevin Love? Do you feel that's that veteran piece of talent that rounds out the team? So play GM. So tell me, and remember, the phone lines are not active, so you get to get social with the Sports Cypher tonight. So either tweet, Facebook at the Sports Cypher, or at the Sports Chica, and Gabe at Gabe Salgado 82.
Correct.
Go ahead, hit us up. I'm going to post that question on Facebook. If you're playing GM and with the Cavaliers, are you willing to trade away Andrew Wiggins to get Kevin Love? I say no. If I'm GM, he's not moving.
There's a LeBron's influence there. Doesn't LeBron want him?
Well, but LeBron allegedly is kind of leaning towards he likes the idea of Kevin Love coming to play with him in Cleveland.
At the same time, that's a gamble that may not get the type of return that you're looking for. So it's, it's a tough question, but I think that, Cleveland's risking too much by making that type of a deal.
It's huge. It's huge to me. I like the fact that, and I understand there's always that question mark with rookie players. The flash and the grit and all the fanaticism you get with them in college doesn't always translate into the NBA. We know that. So there is that concern that Andrew Wiggins may not be that type of player. And here's the thing, we can't put too many expectations on him in a rookie year. We can't. That's not fair. Now, I do believe he would see minutes on the floor with Cleveland, but we can't over-extrapolate and say if he's not like this dynamic this season, then he's failed in the NBA. No. Everybody gets that year learning curve or a couple years to really kind of work themselves into the game because it's a different level of play. The competition's different, your playbook's different, expectations. It's entirely different.
So what was that question you wanted the audience to respond to?
So if you're playing GM in Cleveland and the rumor is that they should trade Andrew Wiggins to get Kevin Love to pair him up with LeBron James. If you're playing GM in Cleveland, would you make that trade?
Hit us up.
Let us know. Remember, no phone lines. So this is all you get in social with the Sports Cypher. At the Sports Cypher, Facebook and Twitter. At the Sports Chica as well. And, of course,
at Gabe Salgado 82.
And here's the thing. For me, I don't feel it's a tough question. Here's the thing. I'm not downplaying Kevin Love. I'm not saying that Kevin Love is not a talent. We could only assess his body of work with a very mediocre Timberwolves team. So you have to look at, obviously, he was very dynamic playing with them. He's a talent coming out of, it was UCLA. So it isn't so much that I feel he's not talented. But I'm looking at the long-term investment and the growth of the team. And to me, when you look at the youth, Cleveland's like a youth movement. It really is. Do you sacrifice having such a key player like Wiggins to get to Kevin Love, who I'm not saying isn't quality, but I don't know if I'd be willing to give up Wiggins so quickly. Matter of fact, no, I know I wouldn't give him up that quickly. Even if LeBron was adamant that he wanted Kevin Love. I would look at what else is in free agency, what can we get out there experience-wise. Offensively, Cleveland actually looked pretty good last year.
So you feel it in Wiggins, huh, Chica?
I am, and here's the thing. I wasn't impressed with watching him in Kansas. I think he had a very lackluster freshman season, but he made it clear in going to Kansas that he was a one and done.
And remember, he had Joel Embiid, too, to kind of take the pressure off of him. And now you see Embiid's got the broken foot, and he may not play this year, even though he was drafted.
So a lot of the onus is not going to be on Wiggins to have to be that guy for the Cavaliers, because that guy is LeBron James. But he has a good young supporting cast. I don't think that Kevin Love couldn't be inserted into the mix and be good. I'm not saying that. But I just think that's too good of a key talent when you talk about building your team to give up for the likes of Kevin Love. Kevin Love can land anywhere else and be an asset to someone. He could be in Oklahoma City and be an asset. He could be in Houston. But I think it would be too premature for Cleveland. And I'm sure right now they're still very overjoyed with the LeBron homecoming. But let's not get too premature and overlook the long-term goal of winning an NBA title. And obviously I'm sure LeBron wants to bring a title to Cleveland, and he wants to do more than one. This is the Sports Cypher. On with me is Gabe Salgado, co-hosting, co-piloting the ship with me. We are talking NBA. We're going to do more Bulls after the break. Stay tuned.
Back to the best sports show on the radio, the Sports Cypher.
Welcome back to the best part of your Sunday night. That would be me, Maya Akai, and the Sports Cypher, where we chop up sports. We're talking NBA, talking Bulls. Big week. Bulls made some moves. Some that made people extremely happy, obviously with the amnesty of Carlos Boozer. And they made the official announcement that they have signed Paul Gasol as well as Nikola Mirotic. So they're making moves. You're starting to see how this team is fleshing out. To co-pilot the show with me tonight, back for more, Gabe Salgado.
Hello.
Gabe, tell people a bit about you, just in case I don't remember you from last week, how awesome you were.
How awesome I am?
Yes.
Well, not as awesome as you, but
okay.
Freelance writer. Follow me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. Everything I post is there. I'm also a weekly contributor to SportsTownChicago.com. Every Thursday and Friday, you can hear me on the afternoons and evenings on that station as well. So just a little bit of everything as tends to go in this business.
Get it all in. We're talking the NBA, which, we had to go through the whole being held hostage with where was LeBron going. And I was the one who was adamant and said to people, look, the minute that he said he was going to free agency, I was like, okay, I really thought it was just a move for the Heat to be able to maybe do some contract restructuring because of you can say that was an epic fail and the NBA Finals lost against the Spurs. Out of fairness, it really was. So because you had LeBron, then you had, Dwayne Wade, and then Chris Bosh. They all kind of went out in the free agency, which wasn't something I would say most people expected. So I thought this was more of just a move to be able to restructure some contracts to get some more talent in. But then all of a sudden you hear that LeBron's agent is courting Cleveland. I flat out said that conversation isn't happening unless he plans on going, because his exit was such an ugly mess. And it was very personal because it wasn't just a player leaving a team. It was a player leaving home. There were hurt feelings. The city of Cleveland, Akron, they were broken.
Not only were there hurt feelings, there were also some damaged buildings, some fires. I have never seen a city so attached to one athlete. Michael Jordan retired twice, but you didn't see that Chicago burned down because
we weren't burning nothing down, right?
Yeah, it was just amazing how that happened.
They haven't won anything since 1965.
But I think it was more than that. I think it was just this love affair. He was so dynamic for them. Cleveland was LeBron James. He was the face of that city. I hate to say this, he gave them hope. Especially, it was a sad departure. It was done ugly. He realized how bad it was. He did apologize. And I think over time, he massaged that relationship. And even though he said he would entertain the thought, I wasn't quite sure if he would go back unless he was past, he was in the twilight of his career. I thought that's maybe when he would think about going back. So when it was put out into the media that his agent had opened up talks with the Cavalier organization, I said, okay, now we have to really pay attention because this is a serious inquiry. When
I heard that, I thought one of two things. The first thing I thought, I really hope he's not leading them on. The second thing that I thought was, okay, he got 2 championships in Miami. He wanted to leave to go win championships. And I think maybe he's trying to mend fences and, now that he's wiser and that he's developed more as a player, even though I don't know how much further he could develop with this type of talent. But, I kind of thought if it's not the biggest tease in the world, he's definitely considering going back home, because a lot of people tend to forget all these years he still has a home in Akron.
Yes, he does.
Now, how often he stays there, I have no idea, but he still has a home there.
Yes, he does.
And obviously he wouldn't, just leave that property there if he didn't have a reason for it.
I'm going to tell you how funny it is. I went to go visit a friend who lives in Akron, and so it was funny. He's like, hey, do you want to see where LeBron lives? I was like, not really. But there's such a sense of pride. And by the way, it was nice. Actually, not an extremely extravagant home. I mean, it was really nice, but I was like, he lives like, I think as a person I would have expected it would have been just this huge palatial estate.
Yeah.
And it was big, but it was modest and it was nice.
One of the sports guys that anchors sports on the ESPN in that hometown in Cleveland actually cried on the air.
It just was a very difficult situation
He cried
for
on the
Cleveland.
air.
So that's why I said when it was reported to the media that there were talks going on between LeBron's agent and the Cavaliers, I said, okay, he isn't toying with this, because I don't think he wants to reopen that wound, like if he wasn't going to go back and really court that, if it wasn't going to happen.
But at the same time, you had to wonder how serious that was, considering he was on vacation with his family while his agent was doing all the talking. So it kind of made you wonder, what the degree of seriousness was about that initially.
I think it was kind of an easy escape. So whatever was kind of happening here, he was out of sight, out of mind, and didn't have to focus. Because for him, it probably was a big, heartfelt decision. I believe that. For as many people who hate LeBron, the only thing I dislike about LeBron is how he left Cleveland. It was very tacky. But that's what happens when you surround yourself with people who are not at the top of their game, and that was part of the problem.
I didn't blame him for leaving. I thought the TV show was a little bit over the top, but at the same time, I don't blame him, because what it boiled down to was they were expecting him to carry the team, when obviously nobody wins titles on their own. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
I mean, even Michael Jordan had a supporting cast around him, and yes, LeBron James did have other guys on the team, but nobody that could really help carry him to the next level.
I tell you what, you guys, I'd like to be the fly on the wall between that conversation, that reconciliation between the owner and LeBron, because, I mean, that was a pretty scathing piece that he put in the paper.
It was.
Yeah.
It was ugly on all levels. So now that LeBron is back in Cleveland, the question I put out to everybody that you can respond via social media, because we are not having calls tonight. So it's at the Sports Cypher, that's Cypher with a Y, at the Sports Chica, and
at Gabe Salgado 82.
Post your comments. If you're playing GM in Cleveland, so now you've got back what is obviously the centerpiece of your team, which you're building around. You have a young team, and having the likes of Kyrie Irving, you've got Deion Waiters. You also drafted Andrew Wiggins. So the rumor mill says that Wiggins is potentially on the trade block to bring Kevin Love to Cleveland. Do you make that move? If I'm GM, I say no.
I agree.
I'm not doing it, and it's got nothing to do with Kevin Love not being a solid player, but I feel like you could get other players in free agency to complement LeBron James, because the level of talent with Kyrie Irving and Andre Wiggins, to me, is exceptional.
You know what I think you could do if Kevin Love hasn't been traded by next year, because he'll be a free agent next year? If he's still with the Minnesota Timberwolves, or say he gets traded to another team during the season and is not happy and he becomes a free agent in 2015, then you could definitely go after him and mix him up with LeBron and Irving and Wiggins, and that way now you may have to restructure some contracts to afford that.
Right.
But I think, trying to be patient and bringing him in free agency as opposed to, mortgaging your future
Absolutely.
to better your present, that would probably be a better scenario for them.
I think before you even allow Andrew Wiggins to actually touch the ball and trade him is ridiculous. You need to see what he can do on the court. Give him that NBA season to develop. So you know he's a dynamic talent. I said he didn't impress us in Kansas, but that's okay. Whatever. We knew he was one and done, and we know he's a solid player. And like you said, he had embed to kind of balance out what you saw in Kansas. So if I'm Cleveland, I'm not like you. I'm not going to mortgage my future so quickly without seeing what I can get from Wiggins. And
sure, he's been doing okay in summer league, but he's going up against other rookies. He's going up against undrafted free agents, guys that are probably not going to be on the team next season or any team that they're playing for. So it's really the best way to balance that out is once he actually starts playing against, set NBA rosters and see what he could do, and especially in the Central Division, let's see what he could do against the Bulls. Let's see what he could do against the Pacers,
Exactly.
So, there's only so much you can get from watching a summer league game.
I would like to believe wholeheartedly that it's just a rumor, that Cleveland has a lot more foresight in knowing that he's too big of a talent to so quickly decide and assess just through summer league or what you saw in his college play that he can't match up or be better than Kevin Love. So we're going to see. I'm thinking it's just a rumor. I'm fully believing that they're not going to be that hasty to make that kind of trade. Getting comments from people on Facebook. Don't trade him. It'd be dumb. Don't want Kevin Love. I'll take the kid. Thank you, D. Robinson, for that. I agree. If you're playing GM, you got to think not just this season. Think long term. And they're young enough, and so is LeBron. Once you put the key components that you can pull from free agency, you really, I'm like you, kind of kick the wheels on that first season.
I can understand wanting to, keep LeBron happy to make sure you win that championship, but when you act on impulse like they did when they brought in Shaquille O'Neal, like they did when they made that huge trade with the Bulls and got Ben Wallace and Joe Smith, who were already washed up by then, you don't want to. Like you say, you don't want to be hasty. You don't want to just act on impulse because you want to keep LeBron happy. We all saw what the end result of that was.
Right.
The best thing for the Cavaliers would be just be a little more patient this time.
Yes, and I think this go-round, I think the Cavaliers have learned a lot in losing LeBron and the prodigal son coming home. I think they learned a lot from watching what happened in Miami, understanding how to build a team that is tiered with talent. And there just wasn't that kind of talent when he was there. I think it's interesting he's coming back. He's probably like, hey, there's Zhao, you're still here. The last component of when he was in Cleveland. Right. Apparently they must really like him in Cleveland. There must be this affection with There's Zhao. Well, he's not bad. He's not. No,
I'm not going to completely discredit, the type of players that were around LeBron during the first time in Cleveland. He did have veteran players, but they just weren't as effective as you needed them to be successful. You take a look at the 2007 NBA Finals, perfect example. It wasn't the Spurs against the Cavaliers. It was the Spurs against LeBron. Everybody else just kind of stood there and watched LeBron try to take on Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker all by himself, basically. I mean, they got swept in 4 games. If that wasn't your biggest indicator of how bad, Cleveland needs, more elevated talent to make that team complete, that was your biggest indicator right there.
Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm believing in my hearts of hearts, even if LeBron made the comment he'd like to play with Kevin Love, he has to see the value of young, talented players. And he has to see the value that Wiggins brings to the table. I can't believe that he would want to trade. Rumors fly around all the time. Who knows if LeBron even said it? It was reported allegedly in the source that Derrick Rose said that he would rather have Kevin Love here in Chicago over Carmelo Anthony.
And isn't it amazing how sources always have to be anonymous? Nobody wants to put a name on that.
If you're reporting it, say it. Don't be elusive about I heard or rumor had it. So it'll be interesting. I think he stays put, and I think the fan base in Cleveland was happy to get Andrew Wiggins, and obviously LeBron was just the more icing on the cake that they didn't anticipate. Let's shift gears and go back and talk about the Bulls, who what they did in the draft in going after Doug McDermott made a lot of people scratch their heads. We know with him coming from Creighton that he's a dynamic shooter, that he lights it up. We might be calling him dropping bombs, McDermott, if that translates into the NBA. But to me, that was a really out of the blue and aggressive move to give up those 2 picks to move up to get him.
I thought the same thing that you did on that, but at the same time, I think the Bulls were also thinking ahead, what if we don't get Carmelo? We need a wing player who can, make the big-time shots. Obviously, McDermott is nowhere near the type of player that Carmelo Anthony is,
right.
And I know a lot of people are looking at what he did in college, but, and I've seen, we talked about this last week, I've seen McDermott play myself. The guy doesn't miss a shot.
No, he doesn't.
But at the same time, this is the NBA. He's not going to be playing, DePaul and Xavier every week,
Right.
So, obviously he's going to be playing teams that have, all-star caliber players on every roster, good or bad. Every team has some player that's going to have to be an all-star. And, the question is, can he carry that scoring output over to the pros, which is much harder to do because the way that McDermott operated at Creighton, obviously in college you have a lot more zone defense, whereas opposed to the NBA you have more man-to-man.
Right.
And because it's a lot more man-to-man, you're not going to see McDermott, roving around the three-point line and underneath the rim, catching a pass out of nowhere, jumping and shooting. It's going to be a lot more difficult for him to do that. That's why he was so successful in college, because he had the freedom to just roam around,
right.
catch a pass from anywhere, and put up an uncontested shot. He's going to have somebody chasing him every play. And chances are he's probably going to have somebody chasing him that's either just as fast as him or maybe even faster than him. And that's why I tell everybody not to read too much into the whole Doug McDermott thing. Yes, it's a good pick for now. We'll have to see once he takes the court in October, November, December, what that translates into being. But for the moment, I think we just have to wait and see, because you can't just base on what he did in college.
Man, have you seen that boy shoot? Have you seen some of the clips?
Oh, I've seen the guy play in person. I was at press row when Creighton came to DePaul last year, and nobody could guard the man. But again, we all know that DePaul isn't exactly they're not exactly your All-American type, basketball team anymore.
I'm talking about the Summer League clips.
Summer League, I've seen those as well.
And it'll be interesting because you go after McDermott, you bring him in. Obviously, they were hoping they would get a lot of the type of kind of projected play you anticipate you're going to get from McDermott. The thought is you might have gotten some of that from Dunleavy, which I'm not saying Dunleavy entirely disappointed you, but he wasn't always spot on when you needed him to be spot on.
He's getting older.
Exactly. So you figure this is that trade up to somebody who is a good shooter, just like Dunleavy, perhaps even better. So I won't be shocked if they trade away Dunleavy, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind that we're going to have to be able to kind of retool the bench as well.
Exactly.
Now, granted, they've already dealt off DJ Augustin, which I really hated to see. I was really hoping he could stay in the mix and at least be a bench player.
Explain that one to me.
That had to be clearly a financial decision, because he was looking for not blockbuster money, but he was definitely looking for a little more than what the Bulls were willing to give him. And he went to Detroit because not only did he take the money deal, but he also has a chance to be a starter there as they're rebuilding under Stan Van Gundy.
Exactly. I can't hate him for that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he obviously the Bulls, kind of resurrected his career because he was kind of like dead weight in Toronto. They cut the guy like 2-3 days before Christmas, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And, he comes to the Bulls and he, did a pretty good job backing up Kurt Heinrich. Sometimes they put the two of them on the floor together and it worked out. So what it boiled down, that was clearly a financial situation.
It is, and it's too bad because I really felt that, I think for DJ, the best development moment he had was with the Bulls. I mean, just like you said, when he was with the Raptors, they pretty much roared him off as if he had no value whatsoever, did not do well, and yet he came into Coach Thibodeau's system and had a fantastic season, enough that he probably may get a starting gig, where he is.
And you take a look at how he performed. Imagine if Toronto had kept him. They probably could have gotten past Brooklyn if they had him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he was huge for the Bulls. So I hate to see that exit. You would hoping, looking at them retooling the bench, that he could have been a key component. But maybe that's where Dunleavy will fall in the mix, because I expect if you trade up to get McDermott, he's going to get touches. It doesn't matter if he's a rookie. We know that Coach Thibodeau is not big into rookies and starting. Tony Snell got, some minutes, but not the kind of developed minutes that he should. But I don't think you make that kind of move in the draft to get McDermott if you don't plan on using him. This is Maya Akai. This is Sports Cypher. Gabe Salgado sitting in, co-piloting the ship with me tonight. We are talking NBA. We are full in swing talking Bulls. The conversation will continue. Stay tuned.
More Sports Cypher in 2 minutes on WVON. The Sports Cypher.
What's up, it's your boy Ice Cube doing this big for WVON 1690. You know how we do.
I'm Gabe Salgado here on the Sports Cypher, along with Maya Akai, the Sports Chica. You can follow me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82, and you could also follow Maya at the Sports Chica on Twitter as well. Also find us on at the Sports Cypher on Twitter as well. Social media is the thing tonight because our phone lines are down, apparently.
That's how you can get your response in, at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher.
And at Gabe Salgado82.
And so far, the trades are leading. I'm shocked at that. I'm really shocked. But hey, that's why we're not GMs, right? They may know something that we don't know. And it'll be interesting because if the rumor is true that LeBron is asking for Kevin Love, I do believe that the Cavalier management is going to have their ear very wide open to what he needs and what he wants. I think that was part of the caveat coming back is, you have to put the talent around me to win. And if he feels like Kevin Love is that guy, they very well may deal Wiggins. Poor Wiggins if he's got to go to Timberwolves.
Yeah, I mean, imagine he goes to Minnesota and he's the only guy scoring points for him. It's just, I can only imagine, of course, how often do you hear a player say, I don't listen to rumors, I don't listen to this and that, but, with Wiggins, especially since he's a rookie, that's got to be going in his mind.
What do you like about Wiggins, Chica?
I like the fact that here's the thing about him that at least appealed to me when he was at Kansas. And granted, you can't use college play to determine how good somebody is. But he definitely has that natural ability. He's not afraid to score. But I think he also, to me, displayed the fact that he knows when to pass opposed to when it all has to be about me. Not to mention he's good in transition. I like his transition basketball. He's a good scorer. You're going to get the numbers from him. He's athletic. Here's the other thing, too. He's good on defense.
Well, Kevin Love isn't exactly known for his defense.
Well, my man in here says Kevin Love, they want him for rebounding. They got pure scorers.
I mean, they do know, like the stat I just read about Kevin Love. He averages 12.5 rebounds a game. I mean, that's good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But don't forget, I mean, you've got Deion Waiters. I mean, they have such talent. I'm just saying it's a risky proposition that you trade away. It's like you're kind of mortgaging your future without really knowing. I mean, if you get Wiggins, and understand, when they drafted Wiggins, look at it this way. When they drafted Wiggins, it wasn't in the back of their mind knowing that LeBron was returning to Cleveland.
Right.
And to my knowledge, there was no real conversation, nor was there any pursuit after Kevin Love. Now, free agency, when you're the hot guy, when you're that guy in free agency, everyone's gunning for you. And granted, there was more conversation about him potentially landing, in Golden State?
Right.
That was a huge conversation out there. Cleveland wasn't even in the mix. So they weren't even, I'm not saying they weren't impressed, but they weren't overly impressed until enter LeBron, and then now the Kevin Love conversation ramps up.
The only way that I see Cleveland making this trade, in all honesty, is if they truly have given up on Anthony Bennett. He had one of the worst rookie seasons in recent memory last year. I think it was because he wasn't ready to be drafted so high. Everybody was expecting Cleveland to take Nerlens Noel from Kentucky, but he was injured. So I think the only way that they would make that move to get Love in there is if they've completely given up on Bennett.
Here's another one. Trade. The trades are leading the response. I'm shocked at this. But here's the thing. If you didn't watch a lot of here might be the other decision factor as my, sitting at home relaxing in your recliner GMs. How many people out there really saw Andrew Wiggins play? That would be the first question.
I haven't.
Here's the thing. So if you really didn't watch college basketball, if you didn't get into March Madness, shame on you. Because if you don't watch college basketball all year, just watch March Madness. Because whatever you missed, you will make up for it.
That's really where careers are made, is March Madness.
It really is. You will make up for it there. You'll see some of the best basketball you can possibly see. So part of the decision maker for my people out there who didn't see Andrew Wiggins play is to know how dynamic of a college player he was. Granted, it wasn't the most exceptional career. I will say that. It wasn't. I watched him play at the McDonald's All-American. Matter of fact, all those that draft class, I saw most of them. Honestly, they're hoopers. Seriously, I was like, if they all decide to come out in this year's draft, it's going to be a good draft. And actually, most of them did, including Jabari Parker, who I really thought would stay put at Duke.
NBA ready?
For at least one more year. At this point, most of these players don't care about being NBA ready, by the way. That's way past their point. They're going to do that year because they're obligated to do it, but the eyes on the prize, and that prize is the NBA, bottom line.
And the thing that surprised me about Jabari Parker, it's not like he really needed the money, So, but at the same time, I think what it is he saw the other talent that was coming into the draft, and I think he wanted to prove that he can compete with those guys, was what I thought it would boil down to.
So it's kind of interesting. So it's probably easy to say trade if you're thinking he's just a rookie. Understand, granted, he's not that talent like, let's say, a Kobe was or LeBron. He's not that kind of talent coming out of college, but he's definitely that top-tier talent. He was the top of their draft class. I mean, between him and Jabari, clearly top of the draft class. But if you didn't see him play, it might be easy to say trade him because of what you're familiar with is Kevin Love. And I told you some pretty good stats, 26-12. That's good. Any given night, if you can put up 26-12, that's good.
But if they trade him, we won't know how that trade is going to impact the team. Maybe how many years down when a player actually shows his worth. And
that's the key thing about when you're the GM. You can't think about just win now. It's
right.
about the longevity of this is a young Cavaliers team. LeBron, technically, and Verjao are the two older people on the team. So Cleveland is relatively young, and if they can get good components out of free agency, if they don't happen to get Kevin Love, they can still be a contender, I'd say, in a year or two. I won't be surprised, seriously, and this is a lofty statement to make, seriously, because Cleveland actually played really well last year without LeBron. You saw flashes of this is a young team that's got some moxie about them, that if they can get the right pieces in here. I'm not saying that, they're winning an NBA final, but they were pretty good. They were going to be playoff bound. Just how kind of like the Washington Wizards kind of crept up on you. They got a couple good pieces out of free agency, like Trevor Ariza, which I hated to see him leave. I was hoping if he could have landed in Chicago. Excellent acquisition in free agency. Well,
here's the scenario. Here's the perfect scenario. Mentoring from LeBron, the veteran talent, and then all of these young guys growing together as they continue to flourish in their career.
I see Cleveland getting back to the 40-win mark this year. Playoffs probably still another year or two away, but they'll definitely get back to the 40-win mark this season.
And like I said, you're talking about if they can keep, Anthony Bennett in the mix. So you're looking at, as their roster is still fleshing out, they've got LeBron, they've got Kyrie Irving, they've got Andrew Wiggins, then you've got Anthony Bennett, Dion Waiters, their center Varejao. Might be another reason why they're looking at Kevin Love because, how much more can you get out of Varejao?
Right.
Obviously, Kevin Love is much more dynamic than Varejao is. So if they could move other pieces and manage to keep Andrew Wiggins and get Kevin Love, now you're talking something big. There's Tristan Thompson, another, a good power forward that's young. They've got Dwight Powell, Brandon Haywood. So this is a young team that they're hoopers, seriously. This might be like you jump down to the YMCA and they're hoopers with a bit more discipline.
Exactly.
That's the kind of team you're looking at with Cleveland. Now, I probably said some names if you're not really an NBA person. You're like, I don't know those people. At least catch a game or two, and you'll be like, oh, that's what you mean when you say Brandon Haywood. Oh, that's Dion Waiters. Then you'll know what I mean when I say those names.
If they don't make the trade for Kevin Love and they go into the season with Anthony Bennett, I think that how he progresses from last season will definitely be something that'll be looked at heading into the trade deadline in February.
I agree.
So, but making the move now to me would say not only you're more worried about winning now, but also that you've given up on Bennett.
They were 33-49 last year. I guarantee you they will be a better than 500 club this year. Simply just putting LeBron in the mix with. He was absent, and they managed to do that last year. I'm not saying that was great, but that's a young, very inexperienced team. So you now put LeBron James in that mix, and you probably add easily a good 10 to 15 more wins on top of those 33 that they got. So, if you didn't see Cleveland, and I watch Cleveland actually quite a bit just because I watch Kyrie Irving. I like him. So I saw them when I could. So here's the crazy thing, and I'll say this. They could potentially peek into the playoffs as a low seed, not because they're exceptional, but because the East has really been watered down with a lot of the trades. And if they can get a couple key players out of free agency, I'm not saying they're going to be a high-seeded East team, but they might be like an 8th seed going into the finals.
You think they could sneak in as an 8th seed?
As an 8, a very low seed. A very low seed. And I'm only saying this because of the trade movements that have happened in the East. The East is very weak right now. The Pacers, who were the favorite, and Miami, that were the favorites, are teams that look very different right now. Lance Stevenson is obviously exiting, out of with the Pacers. LeBron's no longer in Miami. Even the Wizards made some changes that, to me, kind of maybe watered them down a bit. Heck, the Bobcats, who are now back to being the Hornets, cracked into the playoffs last year. So I'm just saying, with LeBron being in the mix, if you can tack on another 10 to 15 wins for the Cavaliers, they may be an 8th seed. Just because the East is so weak right now.
Well, remember when in January when they first released out the early playoff pictures, your 6th through 8th seeds all had losing records at the time.
Exactly. Now, with me saying that, let's flip the switch and talk Bulls. The Bulls very well could be a 1 or 2 seed in the East because of the shift in free agency in the East. If you keep a healthy Derrick Rose, which FY, he's playing in Summer League for Team USA, which is huge that he's going to be game ready when the season starts. So we don't have to go through let's coddle him, let's get him ready. He's going to knock the rust off before the season starts. So now that you've got the like of Derrick Rose being healthy, you know that McDermott is going to get the minutes. But more importantly, you've got some solid post play from Paul Gasol, who, what was Paul's average? Was he like 17 and 9 was roughly with an injured season last year. He was 17.
I think around 17.
Yeah, was, with injury he was 17.
It went down a little bit last year because of not only the injury but also the fact that he was trying to carry the Lakers team by himself. I think it was more like a 14 or 15 last year. But with a better team around him and with him being healthy as well, those numbers are going to go back up. And let's not also forget that this is going to take pressure off of Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Because he was under a tremendous amount of pressure last year. No Derrick Rose. and they wanted him to put more points, but he was so focused on defense. But I think now that you have Rose coming back, you have Gasol, you still got Noah, and you got a few other players coming off the bench. I think that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Butler.
And now that you're getting Nikola Mirotic, which people in Chicago have been waiting for him for a couple years. He's only 22, so he's young. Coming from out of the European League, he played for Real Madrid. I mean, here's the thing I like about Mirotic, and I've only seen a little bit of footage on him. He seems to be a balanced defensive player. Like he can give you perimeter play. He can drop a three. So he can step out in the three and give you that and swing out. So his back-to-basket game is pretty solid, too.
Who does he remind you of?
I don't know that he necessarily reminds me. Here's the thing. I haven't seen enough of him. I mean, just the clips that I saw was just, I saw him stepping out, hitting some threes. It was more like a highlight reel kind of thing.
Some people have made some wild comparisons to Dirk Nowitzki with him.
I haven't seen just enough of him to know that.
I'm the same way.
From the same way. But keep this in the front of your mind as we're going to wrap up NBA and Bulls talk, that the Bulls are becoming very well to look like the Spurs of the East because they are now a more offensive-minded team, still not strong defensively. But the difference is the Spurs get an offensive-minded coach and the Bulls have a defensive-minded coach, which could end up being their Achilles heel. That might be the big issue with them. But offensively, because they can now score and are kind of filling in some of those scoring droughts, they could very well walk away with being a 1 and 2 seed in the East.
I agree.
So we'll see. That wraps up NBA and Bulls talk. This is the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Akai, the Sports Chica, on with Gabe Salgado. We come back. We will start talking Bears. I know you're waiting for that. Stay tuned.
And now, the Sports Cypher Sports Update.
10:05, I'm Gabe Salgado here on the Sports Cypher. Follow me on Twitter at Gabe Salgado82. And I have your scoreboard update. We'll start off with the Cubs, who got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks out in the desert today. They lost 3-2, despite getting 6 2/3 innings and 8 strikeouts from Jake Arrieta. They lost 3-2. They were outscored 17-9 in this series, and they've now lost 11 of their last 13. As for the White Sox, not much better. They were tied at 7 heading into the 7th inning, and then Daniel Webb took the mound for the White Sox in the 7th inning, gave up 4 earned runs on 4 hits and a walk. White Sox ended up losing 11-7. John Danks took the start today, gave up 12 hits and 7 runs in just 4 1/3 innings. And as for the Bulls, as we spoke about earlier, they're getting ready to finalize a contract with veteran point guard Aaron Brooks. He'll probably be coming off the bench along with Kirk Heinrich to back up Derrick Rose. Averaged 9 points a game last season, and the Bulls haven't officially signed him yet, but they're getting there. Of course, earlier this week they also added Paul Gasol, and they finally brought over 2011 draft pick from Real Madrid, Nikola Mirotic. As for the Bears, they're getting ready to open up training camp. Everybody's going to report to Bourbonnais on the 24th. Camp starts on the 25th, and the first preseason game will be Friday, August 8th against the Philadelphia Eagles. That'll be an interesting matchup there. The Bears are going to have to decide who their number 2 quarterback will be behind Jay Cutler, which will probably be the focal point, as well as a rebuilding defense. Lance Briggs still out there, but they also added Jaron Allen. They also added Lamar Houston. And how will Chris Conte play coming off a shoulder surgery plus a miserable 2013 season? That's it for your sports update. I'm Gabe Salgado, and you're listening to the Sports Cypher on WVON.
Once again, it's on
1690 WVON.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Akai. Just wrapped up some NBA talk. Very interesting, as people are still tweeting and Facebooking. Thank you for joining in on Social Media Sunday. We cannot have callers, so your interaction with the show has to be via Facebook or Twitter. So at the Sports Chica, at the Sports Cypher, and that's Cypher with a Y.
And that Gabe Salgado 82.
To weigh in on your comments and thoughts. Before we started the show, we always get some pre-show grub, which is really good. Gianna's Pizza. Today was chicken pizza, and I kind of went back to getting the buffalo chicken pizza, which
the buffalo chicken,
which is really awesome. So thank you to Gianna's for getting us prepped and ready to go. You can always check them out online. Go to giannaspizza.com, or hey, stop in 1519 East 87th Street, or give them a call 773-734-9400. Tell them the Sports Cypher sent you, and we said how good their grub is. So Chicago is a football town, Gabe. There's no doubt about it. We may like the Bulls, you may watch baseball, you may watch the Blackhawks, but when it all comes down, the place where we all meet in the middle is at Soldier Field. Bottom line.
Now, if we could just get my wife to figure that out, we'd all be in a good place.
Does she not like football? Is that the problem?
Yeah, she's not a big football person.
Okay, well, here's the difference. It could be that she liked the Packers, and then you'd have a problem in your household. So it just turns out she just doesn't like football, and that's fair. I mean, just tell her it's guy in tight pants. That doesn't work?
I think that's part of the reason why she doesn't like it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. So the Bears are getting ready to obviously start their mini camps. Before we know it, we will have preseason games. And everybody out there is speculating where the season will go because we're expecting a Jay Cutler, a much better offensive arsenal has been lined up, better than even last year. And they've made some retooling to the much ailing defense. And they caught up with Dan Hampton, who gave his comments of what he thought the Bears would do this season.
It's really shaking out to be a very interesting season. I looked at the schedule, they've got some opportunities. It shakes out where, I can see this team going 11-5. And last year, going into the playoffs, everybody's still in it. All we have to do is think about getting in. Well, how do we get in? The second year with Trestman, I could really see them, going to the next level on offense. Hey, we could be a top half defense. And when you couple that with the number 3 scoring offense, great things are possible. If your offense is able to carry some of the load, you don't have to be the best. You just got to be able to stop people when you need to. So that is going to give us a great chance of getting into the playoffs.
That was Dan Hampton weighing in that he believes that this Chicago Bears team, which has been retooled in a good way, can go 11-5. Gabe, what's your feelings? You look like, I don't know about that.
Don't get me wrong. I want the Bears to do well because, the Bears are Chicago's team, no doubt. But I think that when you consider the rebuilding that's going on, and you don't know if, Lance Briggs is going to stay healthy, what Chris Conte is going to be like once he takes the field again. And, they did retool the team, but there's still some question marks. I think 11-5 is a bit of a stretch. I could see 9-7, 10-6 as more reality, but I think 11-5 is a bit of a stretch.
It's football, man. Everybody has that same scenario.
Here's the thing. Okay, so let's look at what they've done offensively. Let's look at what they've done defensively, and then once we put that into context, let's talk about obviously a big caveat to the success for the Bears is going to be a healthy Jay Cutler. If we get back into a scenario like last year where he is not healthy, Houston, we have a problem because backup-wise, you no longer have Josh McCown. He's now in Tampa Bay getting a starting role. So there's nothing that the Bears could have done that was going to keep him in Chicago. I mean, he had a good season under Trestman. FYI, McCown actually said he thrived in the Trestman system. I always tell people, if you don't know who Mark Trestman is, forget the fact that, he played in the Canadian Football League because he had more than a 15-year history in the NFL working with offenses, specifically with quarterbacks. And some of the greatest successes he had when he worked with Bernie Kosar when he was with Cleveland, one of his best seasons ever.
Rich Gannon, the year the Raiders went to the playoffs.
So they say he is the quarterback whisperer. He feels that Jay Cutler has the skill set that he can make better, but he needs that full season for that to come to fruition when it's all said and done. So the first thing we have to put on the table when you talk about an 11-5 season is, one, Jay Cutler has to stay on the field the entire season. Because when you look at the backup situation, Palmer, it's not good.
A lot of people touch on the fact that, somehow Palmer's had some staying power considering he's been in the league since 2007, but he's only thrown 15 passes.
Exactly.
Jimmy Clausen's thrown more passes than him in just a couple of seasons.
And Jimmy pushing?
Yeah, he's definitely been making strides as far as picking up the playbook and the fundamentals and things like that. And remember, he's coming off a shoulder injury.
Yes.
That's what ended his career in Carolina. Was first he got benched in favor of Cam Newton, then he injured his shoulder, and that was pretty much all over for him. And then, Jordan Palmer's kind of been living in his older brother Carson's shadow for so long. You look at his brother's been a starter everywhere that he's been, but, he's kind of been, practice squad, third-string guy. Now, granted, he may have excuse
me. You're right. There's been some issues with your backups when you talk about whether it's Palmer, whether it's Clausen. Obviously neither one of them have truly been in that starting role. Clausen, like you said, got to step up to the plate for the small amount of time that Cam Newton was out. Even though he was impressive in that small window that he had to get those starts. And here's the other thing too. Before we, let's say it's doom and gloom with the backup situation, we didn't know what we had with Josh McCown really either.
Exactly.
There you go.
Until it landed in your lap and it developed, and boom, it was like, surprise, oh, this is much better than we thought it was.
You know, I was really nervous when that first happened, and I think I got that bug out of my throat finally. And, you know, and I admit I was kind of like, because everywhere Josh McCown has been, it's always been mop-up duty because either the quarterback ahead of him couldn't get the job done or they got injured. Remember, he played on losing teams throughout his entire pro career.
Exactly.
So, you know, I got really nervous, but then you see, you know, he found a system that worked for him. Now, I don't know if he's going to find that same thing in Tampa, but, you know, the hope is that, you know, the Bears can either mold either Jimmy Clausen or Carson or Jordan Palmer into that as well. I know it's a bit of a stretch. I know they got lucky with McCown. Whether they can do that with Palmer or Clausen remains to be seen.
You don't know, but I say if you need to have any form of a comfort zone, know that you're getting those two backup quarterbacks with an offensive-minded coach that knows how to get the most out of you and make you the best QB that's on the field.
Right.
And let me just say this about Josh McCown going to Tampa Bay, which, by the way, I wish him luck because I like the kid. I'm sorry, he's not even a kid. He's a grown man. Tampa's just taking our sloppy seconds.
Oh,
and you heard me say
Ooh,
it.
chica.
And you know why they're taking our sloppy seconds. And I'm going to leave it at that. Because you know what? When we hit around the league, when we do our NFL preview show, we're kicking it off deliberately with the NFL South so we can talk about Tampa Bay. And you know why they're just so up in our business. They're just taking everything from the Bears that the Bears are throwing off to the side. They're picking it up.
I'm feeling a little heat towards Lovey.
I'm just saying. He's in our backyard still. He's still in our backyard. So whatever we let go, like, didn't he even go entertain Gabe Carini for a minute, just for a quick minute, and now he's with Atlanta now.
Did that. He also brought Charles Tillman down there for a talk.
So I'm going to say it again.
He was reaching.
He's reaching. He's reaching for everything here that at least had some form of success to see if he can piece it together and use it in Tampa, especially on the offensive side. I'm just going to leave it at that. So here's the thing. I'm not mad at Lovey. You saw what Josh McCown did last year. And you're thinking, man, if they let Josh Freeman go because that experiment didn't work. It didn't work in Minnesota either. So they're in a position where they needed a quarterback desperately. You look at somebody who at least seems like he can be a game manager. He may not be dynamic. You know, he's by no means. He's no Jay Cutler. He's no Aaron Rodgers. He's no Drew Brees. He's no Russell Wilson. Whatever.
Right.
But he's at worst a game manager, which means he won't compromise the game for you. He can keep things on track.
But at the same time, you know, what if they're totally basing everything off of what he did last year?
They are.
And then next thing you know, they end up not getting anywhere near that. Then, you know, that's going to fall on Lovey right there.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing: you look at what was out there in free agency when you talk about quarterbacks. So either you were drafting and developing, which when you're trying to get the team up and going, do you really want to start a rookie unless you got one of the top tier quarterbacks, you know, coming out of the NFL, which they really didn't get. So, like I said, it's the sloppy seconds thing. They're taking what he feels worked good in Chicago. He's hoping that magic will translate into Tampa. But what I think he's failing to understand, and I'm not just saying this because I really like Mark Trestman, I think he got the most out of McCown because that's what he does best.
And there you go. That's where the value is.
And that's where. So hopefully he has somebody, because we know that Lovey's not an offensive-minded coach. So hopefully he has the coaching staff around him.
He has Jeff Tedford as his offensive coordinator, and you know, one thing about Jeff Tedford, he wasn't the most successful head coach at the college level, but the one thing I give him credit for is he's definitely an X's and O's guy, and he knows how to put points on the board, so that could help McCown. But going back to Jay Cutler, you know, a lot of people were worried if he was going to be able to get along with Mark Trestman, because how many times, you know, during the last couple of years of Lovie Smith's tenure did we see Cutler arguing with quarterback's coach, arguing with the offensive coordinator? You know, this stuff was being caught on camera, and it really was like it just wasn't working out.
But here's the difference with being with Trestman. Okay, Phil Emery doesn't play. The GM doesn't play.
He doesn't.
Okay, he may look like he is the nicest guy, but he will knock you off at the knees.
True, but at the same time, you know, we both know Cutler does have a tendency to have an ego about him, and that kind of concerned me as to whether or not whether or not that was going to work with Trestman. Obviously, Trestman found a way to get through to him, and we saw what the end result was. Now it's just a matter of Cutler staying healthy.
But here's the thing. I think that part of what works for Jay in this situation, one, the team has invested in him moving forward, but two, I think he finally feels like there is a complement of talent around him that really allows him to use his full skill set, whereas for the last couple years that really wasn't there. think about it. If you're a quarterback, don't you prefer to have a coach in your corner that's offensive-minded opposed to having a defensive guy that just doesn't get the big picture? Understand, Lovie went through so many different metamorphoses trying to figure out the offense. You know, he goes out and, you know, he tries to get good offensive coordinators in the time
which
he had
was a
here,
disaster.
You know, and it just never worked. Here's the thing, defensively, Lovie, amazing. And even when he gave that up and gave it to someone else, the team then began going down that slippery slope because he gave up the one thing that really he was best at,
right,
to focus on being a head coach. So I've never personally, I'm sure people will disagree with me, go ahead and get social if you disagree with this comment at the Sports Cypher, at the Sports Chica, at Gabe Salgado 82. Some people are just meant to be coordinators and not head coaches. And I know people just get mad when I say that about Lovie, because understand this. He showed he didn't do good things like with clock management, how he used timeout. He made a lot of, to me,
instant
mistakes.
replays.
Yes. When you've been a head coach for the length of time that he was, those mistakes should have gone away, but he kept making the same mistakes. My thing is this. Some people don't multitask very well. But when he was just a defensive coordinator, especially with the Rams, he was phenomenal. So to me, when you dilute your own talent trying to move up and do something that maybe just isn't best for you, it just isn't best for you.
You know, I honestly thought that Lovie Smith was going to come back to the league as a defensive coordinator doing what he does best.
Okay, I mean, you guys are saying these things about Lovie, but according to the NFL Network, a lot of the players think that he's going to be in the playoffs next.
You know, I will say this. Now, I'm not going to completely knock Lovie because I mean, even though, yes, he did make a lot of mistakes, from certain standpoints, but I mean, he's the winningest coach that the Bears had since Mike Ditka, so we can't take that away from him.
I'm not taking it back from him.
goodness.
But let me just say this also.
Gosh.
Let me say this too, Malcolm. People also believe that Jesus Christ is coming back and we're still waiting. Let me just say that comment that you just made. But,
oh my God.
Not to be mean, and here's the thing. I don't dislike Lovie Smith. I just feel like maybe he's stepping out of his realm of where his true talent is, trying to be a head coach, and he's giving those responsibilities to other people. And the reason that, yes, he might be okay, great, here's the thing. So you're the winningest coach for this organization since Mike Ditka, but here's the thing. You still didn't get us back to the promised land. So do I care that you're the winningest coach, but I don't have another Super Bowl ring? No. As a fan, I don't care how great a season is. If we never get back to winning a Super Bowl, so what that we kept making the playoffs? I mean, you have to grade people. When you decide that you're going to terminate somebody, you can keep saying, well, we can just keep going to the playoffs and missing, getting to the Super Bowl. Or you can say, okay, yeah, you're a great head coach, but maybe this just isn't working for us, and we need to move on.
Well, guess who's on the clock now?
Trestman, but this is only Trestman's second season, and hopefully, here's the thing, hopefully he can stay healthy. When you talk about the complement of talent that they have gone out and got, so you talk about, obviously, Cutler, look at this, just look at the depth that they've added to themselves, offensively. So, I mean, obviously, the O-line, that issue was remedied last year in a way that nobody anticipated that they would be that good. So, obviously, I was a little kind of skeptical when, they moved Garza to center. I'm like, is this a good idea? Not that I didn't think he couldn't be a good center, but you were taking on his natural position. Garza has been everything. He's been that veteran leadership, and he still isn't giving things up in the middle.
He did a pretty good job. I still believe that, he's more of a natural guard than anything, but at the same time, you had to get a guy who was familiar with the cadences and working with Cutler, so you kind of really had no choice. And now, granted, it worked out for the better, and now the Bears got, veteran guards to go next to Garza, so that kind of helps them out there as well. So really, I think that Roberto Garza is really what kept that glue together last season as far as the offensive line was concerned.
What about that guy they just brought in who's the future center?
That remains to be seen, and he has to prove himself.
Right, but here's the thing. It's a good time for development. So you may have maybe 1 to 2 good more years left in Garza before he starts getting, kind of beat on the drop and things like that. So here's the thing. The Bears are finally learning that draft and develop is extremely important. Part of the reason they had such a huge defensive deficiency was because they hadn't developed anybody. So when they started having issues in their defensive core, guess what? When the core was gone, there was no one, and that's why poor Chris Conte looked like he was always do-si-doing every single play because they had no depth in the defense. I mean, granted, he got beat up about how bad he played, but he had company in that.
Well, it's all going to be about the defensive line. That's going to make that defensive backfield look good.
And what made it even worse was when everybody started dropping like flies with the injury bug.
Yeah,
that just made it.
Really
yeah.
So they had no depth, and defensively they were older, and it was revealed that they just had some deficiencies that they really needed to work on. So let's look at what they have, stacked up. This is the Sports Cypher. I am Maya Akai, on with Gabe Salgado. We are in full swing talking Bears. If you want to get in the conversation, this is all getting social tonight. Go to @thesportscypher, @thesportchica, and @GabeSalgado82 to post your comments, because there's no calling tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The Sports Cypher.
Welcome back to the Sports Cypher. I'm Maya Akai, the Sports Chica. We are in full swing talking Bears. In studio, co-hosting with me, I have Gabe Salgado.
Follow me on Twitter @GabeSalgado82. And tonight it's all about social media, because unfortunately the phones aren't working properly.
So you gotta, if you got something you want to say, you got to use Facebook or Twitter. So @thesportchica or @thesportscypher, and that's Cypher with a Y. So we're talking Bears, and we all know that we love football in Chicago.
And leave Lovey alone.
Look, I'm just being honest. I know people hate the truth. That's why they lie. I say it all the time. The truth hurts. That's why people lie. I don't dislike Lovey, but I always say I look at things like when you run a business. You get an evaluation every year, and you're told what you're excelling at, you're told what you're not. And yes, he might have been the next winning coach to Mike Ditka. Yes, there were playoff appearances, but at the same time, it isn't about just making the postseason. It's about getting to the Super Bowl and winning. And yes, you can say he had his injuries, but my biggest issue is I didn't care for his coaching choices. I didn't like how he managed timeout, replays, substitutions, because to me, I didn't feel that was his strength. Defensively, he was good, but when he gave those responsibilities to someone else, to Babbage and other people, it just didn't go well.
What I think probably, and I actually got a lot of arguments for saying this, but I think that, obviously, Treston's done wonders with the offense, but I also think that you maybe had something similar could have happened if you had just let Lovey focus on the defense and bring in like a big name offensive guy that could really turn things around. But at the same time, you're right. At some point that everyone was demanding a culture change completely.
But here's the problem. They did bring in several offensive-minded coordinators and tried to hand them the playbook and say, here, you run with this, you do it. But there were still issues and problems. And if
almost got Jay Cutler killed.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the thing is, if you can't be a head coach, then you shouldn't be a head coach, because the responsibility is managing the offense, the defense, and making in-game time decisions, which I personally feel he just struggled with. I wasn't impressed with it. So when they decided to let him go, it's not that I don't like him as a person. First of all, I don't even know the man. So as a person, he might be the greatest guy on earth, but as it came to being a head coach, he just didn't do it for me. I wish him luck in Tampa. I hope he turns the team around and he's successful, and if they make the playoffs, kudos. I don't have an issue with that. But I'm a Bears fan. I watch the Bears, and what I want for my team, I felt like he just wasn't the right fit. Sometimes you got to break up with people. That's just how it is. And it's we didn't do it over text or anything. We just broke up.
They didn't do it over Twitter either.
Right.
You're fired.
We were respectful about it, and I like the direction they went. The Bears finally realized that they have to get offensive minded if they're going to have success. So that's key. I do like Mel Tucker. I mean, granted, defensively there was some major hiccups last year, but that was a lack of depth and injury. So they've definitely done some things. And let's talk a bit about how the roster looks a little different coming into the season. So let's start offense first. So we know we got Jay Cutler coming back. We'll see what happens with the backup quarterback deal. We'll see what happens with that. But let's talk about the line, because that was the biggest surprise to me, that within 1 year of having, a rookie right side, and then kind of trying to get the left together with some veterans, that they played together like they had played together for several years.
I think it was, they were probably told, you guys have no choice but to do well. And they, even though it may have put some pressure on them, they obviously thrived under the pressure.
So on the right side, for your guard, you got Kyle Long, who to me was very, very impressive. Then on your tackle side, you've got Mills. And I thought Mills and Long, to be rookies, had a phenomenal season. I was just floored.
And with that scouting report on Mills, there was a lot of negatives in that scouting report. They were talking about him not always bending his knees properly, taking plays off, committing a lot of penalties. So that actually raised a red flag to me. But then he just completely adjusted to the league and did well. That surprised me as well.
So I think even though you had a young side, I think they did a great job. Then you go to the left side, and, obviously on tackle they've got Bushrod, which isn't, that proved to be something that was worthwhile. and that was a good anchor. And also, they have Brown as a guard. They've got Slauson as a guard. So, I mean, to me, and then you've got Garza anchoring it all together. I don't anticipate they're going to take a step back this season. As a matter of fact, I see this moving forward. And for Jay Cutler, he has to feel good that he didn't spend a lot of his time looking up at the sky.
That's true.
For the games that he was in.
I mean, the injury that he had last year, it wasn't because, he was just sitting back there like a statue and got tackled. No, he was trying to make a play on his own, and he ended up injuring himself in the process. Right.
So, I mean, you got to say that the one that was a huge issue for several seasons has been resolved. I think we now don't have to focus on that. And they even got a little bit more depth. They drafted and went to free agency, so I think they're anticipating trying to rotate people through, which is important. Then let's just talk about, the receiving corps. As if you weren't already impressed with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, who finally last year we got to see the flashes of how good he is really going to be. So you got to feel good that you've got two big guys on both sides of the field. Finally, they invested in saying a tight end is important, and Bennett, though as quirky as he is, they can stretch the field because they have a solid receiving core. You've got a big tight end that isn't blocking, but he can block if you need him to.
Right.
But he can catch the ball. So now it's not like the value of Matt Forte totally changed last year because they were finally able to truly stretch the field. You know what the downside was? Even though McCown was good, he doesn't have Cutler's arm.
No, he doesn't.
So they didn't get quite to air it out the way you're going to probably see that ball get aired out.
But he probably had slightly better accuracy, though.
I would agree. Because, shorter passes. The longer the passes, there's a greater possibility that it could be intercepted. Let's be honest. But the great ones will put it up there to their receivers. That's why Calvin Johnson's like, give me the ball. That's why Brandon Marshall's like, give me the ball. So the great ones are going to ask for it. Rice, give me the ball. That's just how it is.
McGowan, leadership ability.
He was good. I liked him. He was humble. He was humble and respectful, and if something didn't go right, he was willing to accept the responsibility for it, even if it really wasn't. I mean, I think he masked the defense a couple times on some losses. So I think that's respectful. He's a good guy. I mean, I wish we could have kept him in Chicago. So, you look at, to me, the only thing on offense I'm not extremely impressed with, but we'll see how it works out, is the running game. I feel like we still don't have a dynamic running game.
They released Michael Bush.
Yeah.
Obviously he wasn't delivering like they thought he would.
Mm-hmm.
They drafted Kadeem Carey.
Yes.
Put up a lot of numbers at Arizona. Can he translate that? I think a guy to watch out for is Jordan Lynch, the guy who played quarterback in Northern Illinois.
When they said they drafted him and he's not a quarterback, I'm like, but who knows? You never know.
Exactly. He was a quarterback. I still think he could have played quarterback at the NFL level, to be honest with you.
I think he could have been in a backup capacity.
Exactly.
I do. I agree.
I honestly was pulling for the Bears to draft him as this year's third stringer, but now they want him to use his running ability. But now he's going to learn how to catch passes, and he's got to learn how to pass block. So that's gonna be the biggest learning curve for him. I think making the active roster be a stretch. I definitely see him as a practice squad guy for developmental reasons.
And isn't it crazy? You think of the fact that you have a team that looks at Jordan Lynch, who had a good college career, that could be a backup probably in any system. The fact that you look at, transitioning him into being an offensive player outside of being a quarterback is crazy, because that idea never crossed anyone's mind, or not. They didn't commit to it with Tim Tebow.
No, I'm going to go on record as saying that from a fundamental standpoint, Jordan Lynch is a better passer than Tim Tebow, no question about it.
Absolutely. Never entertained that conversation. And for years, I would give Tim Tebow a break and say, give the guy a chance, give him the right coaches, but, now he's had his chances. I think that Tim Tebow's future is as a running back or maybe a defensive player. He's had his chances, and he blew them all. He has found his niche in doing, commentary on the SEC network, and actually he does a good job.
But he still wants to play in the NFL.
I think he still has the itch, but just in case it doesn't work out for him, he actually does a good job. I've seen a couple of his broadcasts. He's a natural. So
he's actually adjusted quite well.
He has. So if he never ever steps back on the field and throws a pass, I think he's found a way to transition into a different career. It's sad how, here's what I hated for Tim Tebow. I think he took a lot of flack because of who he was. People focused a lot less on his game, because if they had, he may not have ever been drafted to be a starter.
The one thing that did bother me about a lot of the criticism he took, they criticized his lifestyle.
Yes.
And then when he failed to deliver on the field, they bunched that all together and made it seem like Tim Tebow just doesn't belong. And I thought that was unfair to him.
Exactly.
But from a player standpoint, he had his chances. And, yes, he came through for Denver a couple times, but really just couldn't really adapt to the NFL style of play.
He would not compromise. He has athletic skill. He could have played another position.
But you're right, he wouldn't compromise, and that might have been why his exit was sooner from the NFL opposed to later. Let's switch and talk defensively about the Bears. And people are posting on Facebook that they are excited about the offense, that they should be off the chain. I agree. Healthy Jay Cutler, I think Jay is chomping at the bit to get back on the field. I'm actually looking forward to getting down the minicamp and kind of watching them kind of connect and see how it works out. So, defense, which was the Achilles heel last year. And if you're tuning in, you can't call. So get social at the Sports Cypher, Cypher with a Y, at the Sports Chica, and at Gabe Salgado 82. Post your comments defensively. The Bears did go out and make the commitment to get better on defense. I think part of last year they thought they would be okay, and okay wasn't okay because they had no depth. Well, they're making sure they didn't make that same mistake. So let's switch and talk about. Obviously, people were really shocked for some reason when they decided to let Big Boy go. Julius Peppers. And I said, look, you do know that when he came over from Carolina, he came with a story, that he will wow you in the beginning and then fade to black.
He could come back and bite us.
We had gotten the fade. We were at fade to black. We were mid-fade.
I hope not, because I do think that Green Bay overpaid for him. But I agree with you. I hope that he doesn't come back to haunt us when they play him twice a year.
Here's what's going to happen. It's going to be the same pattern, I guarantee you. When he faces the Bears, he's going to wow you, and give it time. He will start to fade to black. And that's why Carolina let him go. He was dynamic. He was a good pass rusher. And all of a sudden, he just stopped showing up.
Chica, they're not going to use him as much.
And my thing is this. I feel that he got too many passes for not showing up game in, game out. They were so busy talking about Chris Conte. And I said, well, did you notice that Julius Peppers, we didn't have a signing? Put an APB out. Where is Julius Peppers?
I think last year, Peppers played with an injury, and they just kind of kept hush-hush about it.
I would hope so, because he just did not play well.
Because he only played one preseason game. And remember that Sunday night game against Pittsburgh, he intercepted the pass, but he couldn't run. And it's just like, okay, yeah, he's definitely playing with something that's bothering him, but they're not saying what it was.
Well, here's the problem. He was spotty. Because some games you'd have him, and he would be off the hook. He was doing everything that you would expect for Julius Peppers. He was pass rushing. He was blocking. He was doing everything. But then you'd have other games where he just wasn't there.
The key is how they're going to use him. They're not going to play him as much.
Well, here's the thing. We don't care because he's in Green Bay, and they can do whatever they want to do with him.
You got that right.
So
they overpaid for him.
I do agree. They may have overpaid, and he might underdeliver, but that'll be their problem. But let's talk about the changes they made defensively. So even though in the preseason, and I still like John Bostic, I do, I feel like he might have taken a small step back developmentally last year with Lance Briggs not being healthy to give him that balance that he needed. Because I think how he moves, he moves great across the field between the hash marks, but I think maybe he just got lost in the transition of the game a bit.
He was throwing in the fire. Mm-hmm. With all the injuries that happened with DJ Williams and Lance Briggs, it was kind of like he had to it was basically on-the-job training. He just kind of had to learn on the fly. So now hopefully Briggs can stay healthy, DJ Williams can stay healthy. And with Shane McClellan now being moved to linebacker, which I'm really curious to see how that turns out. I think, now having depth at the linebacker position could kind of help John Bostic and Kasim Green as well.
And then we also look at, so you look at the left side, you've got Jay Ratliff, who they got last year coming from Dallas, who wasn't healthy. So it seemed like by the end of the season, you kind of started to see, that caliber of player that he had in Dallas.
He needed to get back into game shape.
Yeah, and he wasn't in game shape. So obviously they re-signed him. He's coming back, so he's healthy. So I'm hoping that obviously him and that defensive tackle position healthy, we're going to get, a lot more pressure up the middle from
There's
him.
a sleeper at linebacker named Christian Jones.
I'm excited.
245, 6'3".
I'm excited to see.
Beast.
I'm excited to see how he turns out. I honestly was surprised he wasn't drafted. He's an undrafted free agent. I really thought that he did enough in college to where he could have been drafted. So I think that they're going to sleep on him, and he's going to end up forcing Trestman to make some tough decisions on cutdown day.
That's the fun thing about the preseason is you get to see a lot of players that you probably won't make the roster, but sometimes you see a player you're like, wow, they're pretty good. For them, that's like their audition to end up on another team. So I am definitely looking forward to the preseason to see players like that get out there and see where they can get them. So we're looking at Ratliff at left tackle being healthy. We're going to get more pressure up the middle. Obviously, Jared Allen stepping in to the right defensive end is key. And I believe he decided to come here because I believe that Jared Allen believes. Not that I think he's in the twilight of his career. I think he still has good football left in the tank for at least a year or two.
And I'm hoping he does.
And I feel like he does.
Because that's my only concern with Jared Allen is all of a sudden he comes to the Bears and the production just drops.
Well, let's hope not. And I'm thinking part of his mind is this is a team, when healthy, can make a run at being in the playoffs, obviously, and could be a Super Bowl contender. barring that they truly stay healthy. I'm not saying, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying the Bears are going to the Super Bowl, but I'm saying a healthy team, they can be in contention. I honestly believe the Bears can win they can win the division. I'm not that sold on Green Bay. I feel healthy, and the depth they have at offense and how they've prepared the defense. Because you got to realize, the defense probably choked up a good 5 games to them last year. Seriously.
Green Bay, they had injuries too, and that exposed a lot of flaws as well.
Yeah.
And they really didn't do much to address that.
No, they did. They haven't done a whole lot in the offseason. So, I mean, besides go get Julius Peppers, no.
Well, they overpaid for it.
But so when it's all said and done, it'll be interesting to see if the Bears stay healthy. 11-5 is not that big of a reach. This is Maya Akai. This is the Sports Cypher with Gabe Salgado in studio co-hosting with me. We are talking Bears. The conversation will continue. Stay tuned.
The Sports Cypher.
Welcome back. We're getting to that home stretch on the show. We are talking Bears. Got something to say? You have to get social with us tonight because there are no callers due to technical difficulty. So at the Sports Cypher, that's Cypher with a Y, at the Sports Chica for me, and
at Gabe Salgado, E2 for me.
Gabe has been gracious enough to return to co-host with me to help me work through this awful moment had there been no callers. So, Gabe, thank you for saving me from this.
Well, thank you for having me.
So we're talking Bears, where, a team where, if you heard the opening clip early in the hour, where Dan Hampton pretty much said he feels they can be 11-5 team. And I don't disagree with that, but that's based on them staying healthy. Schedule has a lot to do with that. We'll talk about the schedule in a bit. Defensively, that was the biggest issue. Like I said, I feel like they gave up a good 5 games that were truly defensive losses that had nothing to do with what the offense did or didn't do. So they obviously went out and, tried to, fix as much as they could. So they bring in the likes of, Jared Allen, which I do believe is a good acquisition for them. It will give him some pressure. He plays with intensity. And I think for every down Jared Allen plays, I think if he stays healthy, I'm like you on this, Gabe. I hope he doesn't all of a sudden start to begin the twilight of his career when he gets to Chicago.
Right.
That's not what we want to see. They picked up Lamar Houston, who came from the Raiders. I think he had 56 solo tackles, 6 sacks on his own. Big guy, he's 6'3". The line got a little bit bigger.
A lot of people look at those 6 sacks and figure, okay, we're trying to get more than that, but you got to understand he played for the Raiders.
Right.
And the Raiders, unfortunately, are the bottom feeders of the NFL on both sides of the ball, in every facet of the game.
Someone's rolling in their grave, right? You said that right now.
Al Davis.
I'm sorry, Al. No.
And you look at Lamar Houston, and it's just if you look at the numbers only, that's not telling you the whole story. You watch the guy on film, he's able to shed blocks, and he's actually got some speed for his size. And, that's what the Bears were looking for up front, bigger guys that could also move around, get around blocks, get to the quarterback. So I think that if they give Lamar Houston his fair share of reps, which I believe they will because he could play both end and tackle, you're definitely going to see some things happen. And then let's not also forget the Bears also stocked up at the safety position, so which now puts even more pressure on Chris Conte to come back, be healthy, and perform because the Bears basically got a contingency plan in place in case it doesn't work out with him.
And I will say, the one area that I'm not exactly all that enamored with the defense is the secondary. It still, for me, it still feels like it could be better than what it is. I mean, Tim Jennings, thumbs up, love him. I have no issues, obviously, with him being the right corner. They did pick up Ryan Monday as a strong safety. I like the fact that he's 6'1". I like the fact that they've gotten a little bit taller in the backfield because we all know with the shift in the NFL to get, you look at these receivers who are monstrous, 6'5", 6'6". Seattle, they get the formula. We're going to make our secondaries 6 foot or taller because why do I have a 5'10" guy matching up with a 6'6" guy? Because if it's going to be one-on-one on the matchup, I don't care how good your vertical is, little man.
Right.
You're not getting over Calvin Johnson. That's just
true.
it. So I do like the fact that we're getting a little bit of height in the backfield.
Legion of Boom.
With Monday. Then they also drafted Vereen.
They're very high on Brock Vereen. They're also very high on Kyle Fuller. And I think, those two guys showed a few things in minicamp, even though at that time there was no hitting, no tackling. But, if they can translate over that to once they put the big boy pads on when training camp starts, it'll be interesting to see how that ends up translating because they're very high on both players. But, definitely interested to see how everything turns out with the safety position. Yes, they got guys who, managed to, get some playing time with some other teams, but nobody that's like truly going to stand out to you, obviously.
Yeah, to me, so the biggest investment really has been on the line. I know we all hope and we clamor that we might see a 3-4, but I think it's all been said that you're still going to get your fair amount of, cover 2 type play with some sprinkling of maybe some 3-4 type defense, which is fine. Because before you can really truly be 3-4, because, everyone would throw that at Mel Tucker, you have to have that personnel.
Right.
And they clearly didn't have it last year. And I can't look at this roster right now and say, especially in the secondary, that you have the right personnel to make that transition.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how they line up that defense, because they're talking about it's going to be a hybrid defense. They're going to mix up fronts. And
you're going to see a nickel. You're definitely going to see a nickel, because that is the offenses that we're going to be dealing with. A lot of receivers out there on the field, and the Bears have to go with a hybrid to keep up.
And that's why they're very high on Kyle Fuller right now.
Yeah. So talking about the teams they're going to see, what's really interesting is when I was looking at their schedule. There's a in the schedule they play every team in the NFL South, which next week we're setting around the league, and the NFC South is one of the divisions we're talking about. So they're going to play the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Buccaneers. Also, pretty much they're playing a lot in the AFC East. They're playing the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. So those are the 2 divisions that they're playing a lot. They're not actually getting any matchups on the AFC North. Actually one, the Browns, and that's preseason. So it's really interesting. How the schedule is working out is Week 1, which starts September 7th, they're kicking off against the Bills. The Bills are actually in Chicago. So the first half of the schedule, to me, looks really manageable. Probably the biggest game they have within that before they even hit the break is they play the Bills. The 49ers are the second game of the season. So that becomes your good test. But here's the thing. The 49ers have had a metamorphosis in the offseason.
That San Francisco game scares me, because you're going to put the new defense up to the test against Colin Kaepernick, and we all know what happened the last time the Bears went up against him.
Well, that's true. But what I can't wait is we dig in. The good thing about Around the League is we preview every team in the NFL. You get to hear about what changes that they've made. So obviously when the Bears have in the matchup, you get a feel for, okay, guess who's not with that team anymore. And sometimes one player, especially in an offensive or a defensive mix, can change how potent that team really is. So that's a good thing about when we do the whole Around the League segment. You really get a snapshot of each team. So, you play the Bills the first game of the season. Okay, that's manageable. Then you go to San Francisco.
That's going to be the hard part.
So, you get a toughie like your second game into the season.
And I believe it's a Monday night game as well.
No, it's a Sunday night
game.
Okay. Yeah, it's Sunday night game. The Monday night game is in Week 3, and that's against the Jets. Manageable.
Yeah.
And it's a away game, so it's Monday night against the Jets. Then you get to Week 4, and what everyone loves in Chicago, you get to have Green Bay come into Chicago. That's Week 4.
There will be blood.
There will be blood. Yeah.
Hate them.
There will be blood. Then you go into Week 5. You match up against the Carolina Panthers. Actually, the Bears are after they play Green Bay, they're on the road for 2 weeks. So they play Carolina, and then they go and play the Falcons. So, what's nice about this, and here's a switch-up you get. You finally get to see them with a turf team and a dome team against the Falcons. You get to see that offense, how quick they can look when you put them on turf opposed to on grass. Because we all know speed heats up when you get on turf. So you'll get to see that. And then they play Miami in Week 7. They get New England Week 8, And here's the thing about New England. It's one of those teams, you may not have a whole lot to say about them, but they draft and they get into free agency, and they're always a balanced team.
But the thing with New England, they're coming off a rash of injuries from last season as well. And the Falcons, they're kind of changing things up and moving things around. So they might be a completely different team as well.
You're right.
And going back to that Jets game, I'm going to go ahead and say the Jets are probably going to have another quarterback controversy this year.
Oh, they already have one.
Yeah.
It's already started.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. There's something about the Jets. They're like the drama queens of the NFL. And actually this year, the Falcons are the Hard Knocks team that's being followed.
I was hoping it would be the Bears.
They picked them?
They picked them. It's the Falcons for Hard Knocks. I totally enjoy Hard Knocks.
I do too, but I was really hoping it would be the Bears. I would have really loved it.
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know if I want our dirty laundry out there like that.
But you know what though? I think probably some of the most entertaining stuff would have been with like Martellus Bennett.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah, you're right.
It's amazing how this guy, you start a conversation with him, and he'll trail off into some random subject, but somehow bring it back to the initial point of the conversation. I mean, I don't know how anybody gets that guy.
I think that's part of his whole, what draws people in is that he is just so different, and he's different. He's a different fella, but entertaining.
He's not from Earth.
He's from somewhere.
He's from his own little planet far off in the cosmos.
Would you let your kids read his children's book?
I didn't even know he had a children's book.
Here's the thing. He's such a creative mind. It actually might be a really good book for kids because to me, he's a very imaginative person. So he might be just the kind of person that would write a book for a kid that just would be fantastic. So that doesn't bother me. So that might be it. I'm going to have to check it out. I didn't know that he had a book, so I'm definitely now going to have to check it out and see what Martellus Bennett is writing about in the children's book. That's kind of...
I can only imagine if you take a look at the type of personality he is.
Yeah, like I said, I think it would be very, very colorful.
But what makes him who he is, though, is just the randomness of it all.
It is that. It is very. He's a very random fella. So yeah, but you're right. You can never with these teams, and preseason doesn't give you enough to know what you're going to get when it's truly the ball snapped. Obviously in the regular season. But you do get to see a fair amount of talent being assessed, especially for your team, how they match up. By the time you usually get to the end of preseason, that's when like that last game. That's when it gets real. That's when the coaches really seem like they'll give the starters more of the minutes. So that first half of the Bears' schedule, to me, is really manageable. Probably the most difficult team they're seeing in Week 2 is San Francisco. Now, it's funny. In Week 14, we get to play Dallas, and there's always Cowboy fans everywhere. I feel bad for Dallas. I just don't know what to make of anything for them. I really don't. I mean, from the quarterback situation just to how it seems like they're struggling with talent on both sides of the ball. So do I feel like that the Cowboys are going to come into Soldier Field and beat the Bears? No, I don't. I feel like that's a game we should win. Now, Week 15, you get the Saints. When the Saints come marching in, you get the Saints coming into Chicago.
That's going to put the defense to the test right there.
Now, you look at the fact that, the Saints finally decided they're not parting ways with Jimmy Graham, making him, the highest paid tight end in NFL history?
$40 million.
$40 million. So, Jimmy
Receiver
Graham,
money.
Don't get your payday and disappear. I don't like Jimmy Graham. Actually, a very nice success story, too. A kid that came from foster care, just an awesome story. So, kudos for him. Obviously, the gang is back. Obviously with, the head coach being back, I'm sure Drew Brees is happy. They can get back to the business of playing football. That could be one of the losses. When I look at a schedule and I tell you where I think a loss may come in, I see San Francisco and I possibly see, obviously, the likes of the Saints. Then you get Week 16, you get Detroit. Another matchup that's become an ugly matchup for the Bears.
More ways than one.
Man, you're getting me pumped up.
And then you round out your season with Minnesota. So you have a really, to me, it's a very manageable schedule. You're out of division games. I don't think, to me, the roughest, toughest opponents you got were really San Francisco and the Saints, based on what we know thus far. I don't think the Bills are a team they can't beat. I don't feel we can't beat the Jets. The Panthers might give you a run for the money.
Yeah, Panthers will put up a fight.
But there's like 2 losses. So that's why I said when Dan Hampton spoke to the strength of the schedule, when you look at who they play, because that definitely plays into where you fall out, how many games you can win. I think they have a very manageable schedule when you look at that.
I agree. But at the same time, I don't know if I'm ready to jump on 11-5 yet. They got to prove it to me first.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I think I skipped over a week here. I failed to say Week 12 we do play Tampa Bay. So for all you people who love Lovie Smith, Lovie will be coming to Chicago. So you can give him a big Chicago warm welcome.
Well, he means nothing because...
Well, people loved him. So even when Ditka left here and went to play for the Saints, when he would come back into Chicago...
They cheered him.
We would cheer him because we love Ditka. So
he's no longer a Bear, Chica.
It doesn't matter. People still cheered Ditka when he was the coach of the Saints. And I do believe that when Lovie Smith walks into the stadium, I do believe that people will applaud him. And here's the thing. I don't have a problem with that. It wasn't like his tenure here was an awful experience, because it wasn't. So if people are happy and they cheer for him, I'm cool with that, and then we just go beat him down. Business. Back to business. I'm okay
Keep it
with that.
real, huh, Chica?
Yeah, that's how it is.
It's what's best for business.
It is what exactly. If you're not giving out beatdowns, if we're not, I want to get back to the football I remember as a kid growing up. I want more smash mouth football. And I kind of feel like this defense.
Yeah, I don't think you're with the concussion protocols in place, you're not going to get that again. I think that's fun.
They're trying to take it away from me. I know. It's true. But I mean, I have to say that I do believe they've addressed some of their defensive deficiencies, and that's key. So we'll see. Before we know it, preseason will be starting. Mini camps start next week. We're going to try to get down there ourselves with the show and check it out and get some interviews. And I know, Gabe, you're going down.
I'm going down there, yes.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll bring back some audio and share that on the show. So that's NFL talk for us. Before we get off, because we got a couple minutes left here, I want to talk about the All-Star Game, which for the last couple of years I've been very disenchanted with it. But this is one season that I've actually watched it and enjoyed it.
I think it was the Derek Jeter aspect of it.
Okay, that made me sick. I'm going to tell you why. Because the fact that Tony Gwynn passed away. And
that was wrong.
And MLB didn't acknowledge it.
That was wrong.
Made me real salty.
I mean, Tony Gwynn was a multiple-time All-Star himself.
I mean,
but,
and a respectable guy. And
Yeah.
for them to not acknowledge that was my issue. Abreu, gotta love it. Gotta love it. But it was the Jeter show. But that's fine. This is his curtain call. Let's let him have it. It is what it is. I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. But I feel like fan-wise, more people seem like they were really interested in watching.
Yeah, I mean, there was probably a lot of fan interest heading into it, but overall, the Jeter aspect just completely took over the rest of the game.
And you had the likes of Yasiel Puig, who did not disappoint. People love to watch him play. He's very colorful. So maybe the MLB All-Star Game is getting some traction again. I guess we won't know the next year.
And plus, I think also everybody's coming off the World Cup hangover as well.
That's true. Well, Gabe, this is it for us. Thank you for coming in and co-hosting. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
If you miss this show, you can catch the broadcast on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Go to blogtalkradio.com. Maya Akai Presents. Remember, all podcasts are always available in the iTunes store. Just search Maya Akai Presents, and you can download. Thank you to Nada Harrell, my producer. Malcolm Rockhold, the technical producer, weighing in his thoughts as well. Make sure you stay social with me. Follow me on @TheSportsChica, @TheSportsCypher, and Gabe.
@GabeSalgado82.
And my new website has been revamped, so check it out, mayaakai.wordpress.com. Catch you next Sunday, same time, same place. Ciao. Have a good evening.
The Talk of Chicago is 1690 WVON, Berwyn, Chicago.